Everyone, this is a follow-up from post on LinkedIn, EAG and professionals community, where I introduced the concept of scientific writing in my previous post, and basically ask a question from the community to take a look at these two sentences and come up with their own solutions of how to improve readability of these sentences. Right? If you haven't taken a look at that post, I would encourage you to pause this video and take a look at these two sentences and think about how you could rewrite them to improve readability, right? And maybe think about what's wrong with these two sentences as well, right? Try to verbalize that. All right, so the thing that is causing problem in these two sentences is actually the reader's expectation about subject and verb placement in a sentence. So readers expect subject and verb to follow each other in a sentence. And if there is some material in between, that kind of causes problems in reading. Okay, so let's take a look at these two sentences and identify where the authors have put the subject and the verb. All right, so let's go to the next slide here. Laser pointer here. So what we see here is that the subject in the first sentence, drug treatment, its verb appears way later in the sentence, right? Towards the end of the sentence almost, right? Which causes main difficulty in reading this sentence. And similarly in sentence number 2, although if you were reading these two sentences, you would feel that sentence 1 is a bit more complicated than sentence number 2, right? And this is because there's a lot more stuff that happens in between, the subject and verb in sentence number 1 than in sentence number 2, right? So the idea here is that you want in your sentences to meet the reader's expectation about subject and verb placement, that is, try to put them as close to each other as possible, right? Therefore, readers expect, just to summarize, readers expect the subject of a sentence to be followed by the verb. Anything that intervenes between subject and verb is read as interruptive. And therefore, when we are writing or revising our text, we should remember to place subject and verb as close together as possible. Now, if the interruption is brief, it causes no problem. For example, subject, however, verb, and it happens, and that's totally fine, right? If it's slightly longer, it is likely not to overburden us. For example, subject, except on Tuesdays, and then comes a verb, right? So it's not a big problem for readers, but something like this happens, right? Subject, except on Tuesdays, but not if it's raining, unless it had also rained the previous Monday, verb, so on and so forth. And therefore you feel like really overburdened by reading this sentence, right? And therefore you would feel this overwhelmingness when you're reading the sentences, because in your head, as soon as you have read the subject, you are looking for the action. And there's no action coming up. There are details coming up, right? And therefore you don't like these kind of sentences. We don't like these kind of sentences as readers. And the worst of all is the case when the interruptive material is the information that the writer wanted us to emphasize the most. That is, that piece is something important. Readers will not pay attention to what's in between a subject and a verb, right? Because they are looking for the verb and you are giving them something else. Therefore, it's very important to know readers' expectation about sentences or paragraphs or the entire document to write well, actually. So let's try to fix subject and verb separation here. We identified drug treatment, had, comparable, has, there's a lot of material in between, so we could rewrite this, and this is one of the solutions. You could come up with your own solution, which is perfectly fine. There could be more than one solution here, and here the solution says, at the doses used here, the drug treatment had comparable efficacy to other drugs of this class and also provided improved survival and a decreased rate of adverse events, including CNS and non-CNS events. You could have broken this long sentence into 2 sentences, but actually even this sentence reads much better than the previous one because we have now fixed that subject-verb separation. Similarly, sentence number 2, blood and saliva were collected, supposed to be together. Here's a solution. Of course, one of the solutions. Blood and saliva were collected from the patient upon admission to the ward. Full stop, next sentence. And these are the details now. These were 2 of many bodily fluid samples analyzed by our clinical assistants, right? So that's how you could fix subject-verb separation when you're revising your own text or when you are drafting text. Therefore, consider, this issue because it makes reading difficult. And, it's fine to have these things once or twice in your text, but imagine if you have a habit of doing this, over and over again, readers have finite energy. They cannot spend so much energy reading every sentence 2 or 3 times really to identify this structure. And therefore, they will most likely end up leaving your paper, right? And no matter how great your science is, you will not have a good time attracting a lot of audience to your work just because of these mistakes or errors in understanding readers' expectation. Now, if you're interested in reading more about this, I would point you to this article, The Science of Scientific Writing, written by George Gopen and Judy Swan. And of course, thanks to Judy Swan, where I worked at the Princeton Writing Program and learned a lot about scientific writing under her mentorship. If you want to go further into the details, this book is a good reference, Sense of Structure by George Gopen. Thank you all for your attention.